Hey guys, TSW here with TGN, and today's Friday, so I'm going to be bringing you a Warrior tank guide. So I'm going to start off with talents, as I think it's a pretty good base point. However, I will cover things like rotation, gear, mechanics, and all that cool stuff later on down the line. But for now, as my first video, I'm just going to cover the talents. So obviously you want to spec into Protection. This will unlock Shield Slam, Sentinel, Vengeance, and Critical Block with the use of Mastery. So that's really cool. So let's jump into Protection straight away. We have Insight, which is all it does is increase damage with your Heroic Strike through critical percentages and stuff. That's cool. Next we have Toughness. You always have to get Toughness, as whenever you're tanking, by definition of tanking, you want to stay alive and reduce damage taken by the rest of the group by holding aggro. And naturally, when you're holding aggro, you're taking damage, and armor is the best way to get rid of this through means of physical damage. Next we have Blood and Thunder. This is only worth getting when you are, if there's a chance at least, that you're going to be tanking AoE mobs. If there's no chance of you tanking AoE mobs, or if you're able to get 2 tank specs and you're going for a single target spec, you do not need any points in Blood and Thunder. It is only for single target tanking, and I see lots of tanks just simply seeing, Blood and Thunder being a frequently taken talent, and we'll get 2 specs with Blood and Thunder. It's not necessary if you have a single target spec. Next we have Shield Specialization, which simply grants you more rage whenever you block, and Spell Reflect. It's not a mandatory talent. You do not need any points in this if you have, say, high hit or expertise rating, or if you quite simply have plenty of rage. And whenever you're rage starved, go 3 out of 3. And it's a talent to revise once in a while. If you're constantly rage starved, you want to spec heavily into Shield Specialization. However, if you find yourself having plenty of rage frequently, spec 2 out of 3, or more commonly 1 out of 3. Next we have Shield Mastery. Really good talent. It reduces a lot of cooldowns and gives you some pretty nice perks. Reduces the cooldown on Shield Block by 30% and Shield Wall by 180%, as well as whenever you Shield Block, you also reduce magic damage taken for 6 seconds by 20%, which is pretty cool. Next we have Hold the Line. This is a really good talent. It's the talent which makes you prio parry over dodge, and later on I'll get into showing you some graphs as to how to judge how much parry you can have more than dodge, because obviously you have the diminishing returns, but I'll get to that in a future video. Next we have a Gag Order. This is a really good talent for 5-mans, and really only for 5-man. There may be some situational raid encounters where it is viable to spec, but generally speaking, in a raid environment you will not want to be getting Gag Order, quite simply because bosses are generally not silenceable. However, in 5-mans it's really good for getting those casters in your melee range, as well as having the load cooldown. But for this spec, I'm not going to use it. Next we have Last Stand, and I don't really need to say much about Last Stand, but generally speaking, it's a great cooldown, and pretty unique, obviously, with the Druid equivalent. It's whenever you pop it, basically, you'll get obviously 30% extra HP for 20 seconds. So if you drop below 30% HP whilst this buff is active, you've effectively cheated death, and I think that's pretty cool. Next we have Concussion Blow, which I think is overlooked by a lot of tanks. It's a long stun. It's 5 seconds with a very short cooldown of just 30 seconds. Whenever, say, 2 mobs are pulled off you and someone else has aggro of them, taunt one, Concussion Blow the other. Simple. You've got things like Challenging Shout saved. You don't have to blow your vital cooldown straight away, because what happens if aggro is pulled again? You are caught short effectively. But I'll get on to, it'd be really cool to get onto like priorities later, like not only priorities of the rotation, but also moves. Like you want to always try and use your Spell Flex first, and then your Concussion Blow, and then your Pummel, just so that you have the long cooldowns coming off cooldown quicker, effectively. Okay, so let's carry on, because I'm going to spend way too much time going through the talents, I can tell. Next we have Bastion of Defense, which reduces the chance you'll get hit. Reduces the chance you'll be critically hit by melee attacks by 6% whilst in defensive stance. In addition, when you block, dodge, or parry an attack, you have a 20% chance of getting enraged, increasing physical damage done by 10% for 12 seconds. Essentially, get this and you will not you won't be critically hit, and you'll be. It's the Cataclysm's answer to not needing defense cap anymore. You won't be critted at all as long as you stay in defensive stance, and also because you can get enraged with this ability, it enables the use of enraged regeneration, which is pretty neat. So, like, without saying it or wording it as such, it gives you an extra cooldown. And next we have Warbringer. This is a really, really good ability. Warriors are renowned for being mobile in an encounter, and Warbringer means that you can use your charge intercept in combat, which is pretty good. Yeah. Also, improved revenge. This is a really good ability, not only because it attacks a different target, so it acts as more of a cleave, but also increases the damage. And the damage alone is worth taking, but the cleave is just a little bit extra. It's pretty nice. Devastate, obviously, it does way more threat than a standard Sunder Armor. It's pretty different, actually. Go on a mob and give it a couple of Sunder Armors, and then give it some Devastates, and you'll see the threat shoot right up. Basically, it just replaces your Sunder Armor. Next, we have Impending Victory. This is a pretty, well, I wouldn't say useless, because it can situationally be viable. But essentially, all it does is procs the Impending Victory ability. Excuse me, I've got loads of phlegm in my mouth. Hold on. Sorry, this is a live recording. So I need some water. Right, basically what it does is procs your Victory Rush whilst basically without getting a killing blow. But instead, when a target is below 20% HP, you proc Devastate. You have a 50% chance of using Victory Rush, but it only heals you 5%, which isn't a huge amount of healing. And generally in raids, well, I think that if this ability didn't have a if when you had this spec'd, when you use your Victory Rush, if Victory Rush didn't use a global, I think it would be much more viable, and people might actually use it. But generally speaking, it's not that great. But not to say you should never use it. You should just probably not use it. Next, you have Thunderstruck. Only really get Thunderstruck. Only really get Thunderstruck whenever you have Blood and Thunder, because the two go hand in hand very, very well. And generally speaking, when you're going to be getting Thunderstruck, you're going to be AoE tanking. And for this build, it looks like I'm going for a single target build, so I'm not going to be using Thunderstruck. But don't worry, I'll cover AoE builds in a second after I've gone through this. What it does is gives a 3% chance of my rend, cleave, and improves the damage by 3% of rend, cleave, and thunderclap. In addition, your thunderclap improves the damage of your next shockwave by 5%, stacking 3 times. So you get a 15% extra damage shockwave once in a while. But I'm not going to go for it for now. Next, we have Vigilance. Obviously, I see Vigilance overlooked by a lot of people, quite simply because in 5-mans it doesn't really do that much, and I agree it doesn't do that much, but I'd say it's always worth speccing. It's 1 talent point, but in raids it's definitely worth taking. Just pop up near the tank. If the other tanks takes any form of damage, you get extra Vengeance. That's cool. Also, whenever anyone takes damage when they have Vigilance on them, your taunt is refreshed, which is awesome. And if there ever is a chance that someone's going to pull aggro and you have Vigilance on the wrong person, it's just a simple global to change Vigilance and put it on someone else, which I think is also something overlooked by lots of tanks. Heavy Repercussions. Whilst Shield Block is active, my Shield Slams hit for an extra 100%, which is really nice. You can get some really hard-hitting Shield Slams and obviously threat-generating Shield Slams whenever you have this talent. So I do not have enough talent points to go for the second last tier, and so I'm most likely going to spec for 3 out of 3 in shield specialization. The reason for this, for me, is because generally speaking, when you're tanking a single target and you're doing like the correct rotation, again I'll get into that in a later video, I personally find myself rage starved, not frequently, but more than I'd like to, hence why I'm going for shield specialization. Like I say, this is going to be a single target build, so I don't want Blood and Thunder or Thunderstruck. Impending Victory is pretty underpowered, so that's not great. And also Gag Order. I can't silence bosses generally, and this is going to be mainly a raiding spec. And also Heroic Throw. I don't really use Heroic Throw that often in a raiding spec, so quite handy to get 3 out of 3 shield specialization. And also on my gear I have like 7 expertise and 1.15 hit, which is very, very low. so I'm not hitting the boss with white hits and getting rage that way. So next we have Safeguard, which is a really good ability. Again, I think it's overlooked by a lot of warrior tanks. Reduces the damage taken by the target you intervene by 15% for 6 seconds. That's incredible, and obviously when you spec twice, the 15% goes to 30%. 30% reduced damage for 6 seconds is very, very handy. However, do bear in mind that when you do Vigilance somebody, their threat does drop. So if it's a you use 2 tanks on the target and you're taunting off each other, just make sure the tank is way ahead in threat. Ideally 10%, so you don't have a threat switch. But also generally very good if someone's failing, or like, I don't know, whenever they need damage reduction, I guess. Next you have Sword and Board, which is a really, really, really cool ability, and well, what more can I say? It increases the critical strike chance of Devastate by 15%. In addition, when you Devastate or Revenge deal damage, they have a 30% chance of refreshing the cooldown of Shield Slam and reducing its cost by 100% for 5 seconds. So this basically, I don't know, just buffs Shield Slam to hell, and also the abilities which trigger a Sword and Board proc. Next we have Shockwave, which will end the protection tree. Basically, again, I think Shockwave is overlooked quite considerably. When doing 5-mans, I use Shockwave as pretty much as CC. I mean, it's got a 17-second cooldown, so it's longer than most, but you can glyph into it to reduce it. But basically, all it does is stun everyone in front of you for 4 seconds with the frontal cone AoE, which is great. You can use it offensively to do damage and threat, or did I say offensively or defensively? I can't remember. You can use it offensively to do damage and cause threat, or offensively and defensively. Why am I getting these two mixed up? Offensively to do damage, and defensively to get the stun effect. Because a 4-second stun of everyone in front of you, you're not going to be taking damage for 4 seconds. Your healer is more than able to cast some heals to get you back up to full HP. So we've filled up protection. Generally speaking, you don't really want to be spending more points than 31 in protection, although some builds will require you to do this. But if I'm going to go for an AoE spec, I can juggle these points around, because the points in Fury and Arms are very, very nice. And so yeah, let's get on to them. We have War Academy in Arms, increasing the damage of Mortal Strike, Raging Blow, Devastate, Victory Rush and Shield Slam by 5%, and when spec'd in 3 out of 3, 15%. So Mortal Strike, we don't use Mortal Strike. Raging Blow, we don't use Raging Blow. Devastate, we use Devastate. Victory Rush, on occasion. And Shield Slam, Slam, no. So it's Devastate and Victory Rush. So yeah, we use those abilities, Devastate in particular. And obviously with a Sword and Board we have additional crit strike with Devastate. So Devastate's getting a nice buff. So with War Academy we further increase our threat generation, simply because we have extra damage. And also Field Dressing, oh my god, this is like spec 3 out of 3, just so I can show you just how amazing Field Dressing is. You have to get Field Dressing straight away. Increases all healing received by 6%. That's insane. So insane. And the healing effectiveness of all self-healing you do by 20%, which is insane. And it also stacks with the extra 6%, so that's cool. So your Enrage regeneration and your Blood Craze, which we'll get onto later, heal you for extra, which is great. Part of being a tank is not dying, and part of not dying is getting healed. Next, Blood Craze. Generally speaking, I go for Blood Craze very early on. However, it's not always taken, and again, I'll get into that in a second. After taking any damage, you have a 10% chance to regenerate 3% of your total HP over 5 seconds. And generally speaking, I'm not quite sure what the uptime is. It's like 60%, something like that, 50-60% in boss encounters. I'm just trying to remember what mine normally is, something like 50-60%. So it's pretty active. It doesn't heal you for an insane amount, but it can save your life by filling in the healing gaps. It's, like I say, more often than not, it's ticking extra heals on you, which is pretty good. So next, what would I go for? I'd probably prioritize Cruelty. Increases the critical strike chance of Bloodthirst, Mortal Strike and Shield Slam. So it's a way up between Shield Slam by 10%, 10% crit, or Devastate by 15%. And it used to be one of these used to do. I can't remember. Did War Academy used to do Shield Slam as well? In which case, War Academy was awesome. But generally speaking, for snap aggro at the beginning of the encounter, you'd prioritize your cruelty, which is generally speaking where threat matters most. Your first Shield Slam gives you so much threat at the beginning of the encounter. But generally speaking, a spec like this will do you well. I mean, you have your extra threat with Insight, your extra threat and rage regeneration with shield specialization. You also have charge in combat, obviously. You have no Thunderstruck, no Blood and Thunder, so it's very much a single target spec. You have Safeguard, so you can potentially save people's life with Intervene. You can heal yourself with Blood Craze, extra healing with Field Dressing, which is mandatory, and you do extra damage with your Shield Slam and Devastate. So that's pretty much a single target spec. The Glyphs to help further your single target specking. Generally speaking, obviously you always go for your Devastate, Revenge, and Shield Slam major glyphs. And for this is a single target glyphing, all of this. So Shockwave reduces the cooldown of Shockwave by 3 seconds. Shockwave is used in your single target rotation, but again, I'll get into that in a future video. Heroic Throw. Yes, I don't have Gag Order, so it kind of contradicts, but at the same time, there's not a lot of talent options which will increase my threat and also increase the raid damage. And quite simply, by applying the Thunder Armor effect, it means that if I'm away from the boss, because quite often I'm running around and doing stuff, I can continue to get the Thunder Armor buff on the target. And obviously, Glyph of Long Charge or Rapid Charge, or instead of having Heroic Throw, get Rapid Charge and Long Charge, depending on the encounter. As always with any glyphing, get plenty of Dust of Disappearance and just spec for each fight, basically. And that's pretty much it for the single target spec. Let's just reset these and I'll go for an AoE spec. So, we don't necessarily have to go for Insight. I see a lot of people dropping Insight, but it depends how all-roundish, if that's a word, you want your spec to be. Generally speaking, for an AoE spec, I will go 3 out of 3 Insight, just because it has more versatility, and it means that I can do more threat with my Heroic Strike, although generally speaking, when you are on an AoE pack, you'll be cleaving. So I am going to go for 2 out of 2 Blood and Thunder, because I want to spread my Rend and spread my AoE and get more threat on more targets. I am going to go 1 out of 3 because basically when you're tanking more than one mob, you're taking more hits and you dodge and block. You avoid more basically as well, because you're taking so many more hits, so many more swings basically, and you're going to be blocking a lot more often because you're taking more swings. So you do get lots of blocks, which in turn mean that just by getting the extra 5 rage when you block, it stacks up effectively. So again, if you're still low on rage when you're AoE tanking, go 3 out of 3. But for me, normally 1 out of 3 is a comfortable amount in shield specialization. Next, I have Shield Mastery. Obviously, we need Shield Mastery for, if nothing, the shield block, because you're going to be using shield block a lot, pretty much every cooldown when you are AoE tanking. We're going to obviously get Hold the Line for the extra parry, sorry, not extra parry, the extra critical block, and still, prioritizing parry over dodge. Gag Order, no thank you. However, I don't want to be like, okay, don't get Gag Order, it's rubbish, because that's a very big misconception with a lot of the talents, and I hope I am being very open with a lot of the talents. Essentially, what I want to be doing is telling you what the talents are good for and bad for, and then you guys can make your own informed decision about how you wish to spec. Because I don't want to be like, boom, AoE tanking spec, boom, single target spec. These are your specs that you want to live by, and here's maybe just one general tanking spec. But I don't want to be like that, because it's personal preference as well as anything. And you can go for like a hardcore heroic mode, single target spec, and be like, oh yeah, I got best spec for killing bosses. But if you don't understand why it's spec that way, you're not going to be using your abilities to the best of your advantage, which renders the spec pointless if you're not going to make the most of it. So don't necessarily go by all these talent points, but listen to what I'm saying and make your own decision is what I'm trying to say. Obviously, going for Last Stand. Gonna get concussion blow, obviously. Bashing defense, yes. Let me just go through the talent that you must have. Okay, toughness, always. Shield mastery, always. Hold the line, always. Last stand, it's a cooldown, always. Vigilance and concussion blow, I'd say always. Although in some majorly rare occasions, you may be able to, not get, but generally speaking, to like anyone who requires a guide, get these. Bastion defense, you must have, or else you're just simply going to get critted and die. Warbringer, I would vote it as yes, although some encounters you may not need it, but I'd go for it just because, well, generally speaking, no, it's up to you. Let's leave it at that. Improved revenge, yes, you must get this. Devastate, yes, you must get this. Vigilance, like I say, yeah. Sword board you have to get, and also Shockwave you have to get. Not only because it's an amazing ability, which I still feel is underused by warriors, but also you definitely want to unlock the other talent trees to start filling out abilities. So you must get Shockwave. So I'm going on so many not off topic, but I'm not really going through this talent guide at once. But where was I? So this is an AoE spec. Okay, so I'm going to get Improved Revenge, not only for the damage but for the cleave effect. Going to be getting Devastate because Devastate owns, and obviously what I said before about it. Thunderstruck because it increases my rend, which is going to be buffed up by Blood and Thunder. Also Cleave, I'm going to be using Cleave a lot instead of Heroic Strikes when I'm AoE tanking. And also Thunderclap, which I'm going to be using pretty much every cooldown when AoE tanking. And also, every time I use my Thunderclap, I will get a stack, increasing the damage of my Shockwave by 5%, stacking 3 times. Oh, sorry, it stacks. It's 10%, stacking 3 times, so it does an extra 30%, assuming I have Thunderclap 3 times between Shockwaves. Obviously, you're going to get Vigilance, and then Heavy Repercussions. Not necessarily all the time, because I don't know. It's again up to you. For me, it's a way up between. Oh, sorry, I've not got Warbringer. Doing. There we go. Now I unlock the tree. But it used to be in, I think, one of the specs I had a way up between Shield Specialization and Heavy Repercussions, because if you don't need the extra threat, so say you've got loads and loads of threat, you simply don't need Heavy Repercussions, because all it does is increase the damage of your Shield Slam. So again, make your own decision. Sword and Board, I'm going to grab this. And again, Safeguard, I really like getting it because it's a very effective cooldown on somebody. 30% reduced damage for 6 seconds. However, I would strongly recommend, if you have any hesitation about Rage, go for your Shield Specialization. Although, generally speaking, when you are AoE tanking, Rage is, like I say, not an issue because you're just taking so many more swings. But, again, it's your own decision. Do what you think is right for you. Again, if you have any questions, post them as comments, and I'll reply to them on my channel comments, which is Warrior TSW is the username. So if you see that username in the comments below, that's me. I'm going to go for Safeguard. Personal preference there. Quite simply because what are the other options? Actually, I'll probably go for Heavy Repercussions for the actual threat. But again, it's a way up between I can go for 3 out of 3 Shield Specialization. I can go True out of 2 Gag Order. I can get Impending Victory if I feel like I'm going to die. But generally speaking, that's not the reason to get Impending Victory. But I'm going to go for Heavy Repercussions just because the initial Shield Slam, and Shield Slams therefore after, whenever you have your Shield Block up, do lots of damage. So. No, but if people are dying and Safeguard looks like a smart move, by all means, get Shield Slam. Get Safeguard instead of Heavy Repercussions. And then get Shockwave last of all, not only because it's an amazing ability for AoE, but also because it unlocks you the trees. Then I'd probably, just because I don't want to die, I always go for the Field Dressing. I prioritise that one always. But obviously because I'm 85, I can get whatever talents I want, really. And then I'm going to go for War Academy, and then it can be a way up because I'm going to mention Deep Wounds. Deep Wounds is good if you want to get extra threat. Your critical... Oops, sorry, my mouse went crazy. Your critical strikes cause the opponent to bleed, dealing 48% of your melee weapon damage average over 6 seconds, which, you know, may sound a little bit confusing at first, but essentially what it does is a small rend. It increases the damage. You can't spread it with Thunderclap, but it will do extra damage to any targets when you do damage, which is pretty cool. When you crit as well, sorry. But yeah, just a little bit of extra threat. If you ever have any threat problems, go for it. If you don't have threat problems, why would you need to spec for it, right? It also does a bit more damage as well if you're concerned about damage. But generally speaking, when you're tanking, you do not want to be worrying about damage at all. I think that's a general rule of thumb when tanking. And then I'll do something like that. I do favour often this sort of configuration with my War Academy field dressing, Blood Craze and Cruelty. A lot of people do go for Deep Wounds. I used to sometimes spec for it. I think, what's this? This is my AoE spec for Lord Rylith, because when I'm tanking the ads there, I used to have not like threat issues, but it used to definitely help more than Blood Craze, because like I wouldn't ever die on the ads. But yeah, Deep Wounds seemed more viable to me than Blood and Thunder. So, you know, reevaluate your talents regularly, because quite simply they change. Your playstyle changes, the encounters change, your gear changes. You know, it changes often, and a lot of people go into you know, their tree. You know, what's the best one? Stick to it. Don't necessarily understand why they spec like they do, and they'll keep that spec and glyph layout until, you know, there's a huge patch in your talents are all unlearnt because they've changed considerably. But alternatively, in this spec, what am I doing? An AoE spec. Yeah, if you have any issues with threat, quite simply, go for your what is it? So Deep Wounds, like this spec. Is that identical? Yeah. So that's the spec I use. I'm glad that I got the same spec, but I think I always would have. So I've gone through a single target spec and an AoE spec. Next, I'm going to go through a general spec, because I'm like one of the main tanks for my guild. I'm only ever tanking, so I can quite easily free up my secondary spec for another tanking spec. So let's reset these. But you know, if if you've got a DPS spec or something, and you want to or a PvP spec or whatever, or you quite simply, I don't know, whatever reason, you can only afford one tanking spec. I'm just gonna. I have this like premeditated. I don't know what spec I'm gonna use, because I obviously don't really have this problem. But generally speaking, an AoE spec will not kill you if you are single target tanking. So let's go for. Let's again quickly go for a spec where you're going to be prioritizing. You know, going to be really good at AoE tanking. So where were we? I could have just had the talents as they were before. So something like I've messed this up somehow. Oh, it's because I've spent too many points here. I spent one too many points in here. So let's go out of. I still have one too many spent points. There we go. That is how I was spec before. Right. Generally speaking, like I say before, on the AoE spec, everything still applies quite obviously because it's the same spec. But when you are single targeting, basically go for an AoE build just because it has the versatility of being able to easily tank multiple mobs. But if you are having issues, again, with rage generation, I would probably take 2 points out of. I don't know. I don't know. Depending on if you're dying or not. If you've got plenty of HP and your healers are fine, I'd probably do something like that. Go through these shield specializations. You'll have lots more rage from not rage starved. But I'll get on to rage starved later, because rage starved isn't necessarily a bad thing. As long, like if you're, because a spec like this, if you're rage starved but still able to keep aggro and you're going low often, you need your blood craze, or else you'll quite simply die every time you go low because of the little healing that blood craze does. But I'll get on that later. But you basically go for an AoE spec because it has the versatility of being able to tank AoE fights very easily. And then, because like, if you go for a single target spec, what's the single target spec differing? Just not having Blood and Thunder and going 2 points in shield specialization and Safeguard. Safeguard is situational and, you know, isn't always used. But, you know, generally speaking, an AoE spec, I'd say, is very good and it's something you should be going for. However, if healing is really nice, you can go for something like this to boost your threat. Generally speaking, like, go for, if you can only use one spec, do what I said earlier. Just make your own spec. You know, I've gone through all of the abilities that you would ever go for as a tank. So, you know, do what you think is necessary. Like, let's go through them again really, really quickly, because I know this video's gone on for I don't know how long. But, you know, if you want single target threat, go for this. Oh, I suppose you could take points out of insight, but then your threat would be lower. And you want to prioritize your insight for threat, single target, over anything like deep wounds. Quite simply because deep wounds doesn't do that much threat, but insight does lots with your heroic strike. But again, build a talent spec how you want it to be. And yeah, if you're building your own spec, unlearn it and try a new one. See what works best for you. But if I had one spec, it would be most likely a for me personally, it'd be something like this. But hopefully, if any of you guys out there are thinking to yourself, you know, GSW, you don't have much expertise and much hit, so your threat's going to be, you know, a lot of your moves are going to be missing and dodged, which is the case. And yet, I'm not going for my shield specialization, so I don't have that much rage. Therefore, I'm not really hitting a lot because I don't have a lot of rage, so I can't always, you know, spam my heroic strike as lucratively as I would like. But again, I'll get onto that later. And for really quickly, when you're doing AoE tanking, these are the glyphs that I use. Again, use whatever glyphs you like. Yeah, you can read the tooltip. The tooltips are very simple to understand in terms of glyphs. But it saves me making a separate glyph video. And this video has gone on long enough, so I might as well make it longer. Obviously, Devastate, Revenge, and Shield Slam as your mages because they're the only tanking ones. Shockwave again, just because, you know, it's awesome for AoE threat. Cleave, because you're going to be spamming Cleave anytime you have multiple mobs on you, and being able to hit 3 mobs is better than 2. Glyph of Thunderclap. This is pretty good glyph. Again, slightly situational, but very rugged nonetheless, increasing the radius of Thunderclap by 2 yards. Now, one of the things that, you know, you'll learn from tanking is, you know, you won't need like a circle around you indicating your radiuses. You will, you know, I'll know that with this glyph, I'll be able to thunderclap that player there. And then like Demolishing Shout. Oh yeah, did I go over minor glyphs before? I didn't, did I? Minor glyphs, I always pretty much go for Demolishing Shout because it just boosts it so much more. I mean, increases the duration. Who cares really? Except it can save you globals in the long run. So yeah, do care about that. Ignore what I'm saying. And the area effect by 50%. So that's the reason for getting it more so than the increased duration. But the increased duration does help. Glyph of a Battle Shout increases the duration by 2 minutes and the effectiveness by 50%, which is cool. Generally speaking, I will be popping my Commanding Shout because if, you know, for me, if I don't like. Well, it kind of contradicts why I've got Battle Shout. I've got Battle Shout because, generally speaking, we have priests. I raid with priests, as, you know, any good raid would. So I always have the stamina buff. So I'm going to be popping my Battle Shout because at the beginning of the fight, everyone's going to be having the stamina buff. However, later on in the fight, I'll always use Commanding, quite simply because, you know, in case anyone's died that doesn't get the buff, or for me personally, because, you know, I can be selfish and choose what buff to use, a Battle Shout or Commanding Shout. I'll always go for Commanding Shout on the off chance that I don't get buffed with the Fortitude. So that's pretty much it for me, guys. This video has gone on forever, and, you know, I have posted a video every weekday this week, so if you have stayed tuned to the very end, could you please rate this video a thumbs up, because a lot of time and effort has gone into making these videos. It's hard enough making a video a week or something like that, but making 5 a week is pretty insane, And if you want to check out any more of my videos, you can check out my personal channel at youtube.com/warriortsw. Alternatively, you can watch me when I'm streaming at twitch.tv/warriortsw. I've been TSW with TGN. Again, if you love this video, you can favourite it. I will catch you guys later. Bye. Whew, that video went on forever.